Hi, I'm Ann Bisay. Welcome to the Mindset Channel. We are on the road today, and so I thank you. If the screen gets a little blurry, just hang in with me. I'm excited to share the word for this week. This week's word is the power of yes. We are in a season where we're sharing single words and really just digging in under each one of them. Last week we talked about the power of our no, and I'm really excited to write that up and get it up on the blog. And today we're going to continue on with the power of our yes. Now, yes is an interesting word. It reminds me when I was growing up, my dad used to say, if you're not sure, say no first. And then you can always change it to a yes. But if you start with a yes, it's going to be really hard to change it back to a no. And, when I was, 15, that sounded like really good advice. What I've come to learn is that it's better to just let your yes be yes and let your no be no. Because switching, back and forth isn't always good either. And one of Jesus's greatest teachings, in my opinion, was exactly that. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. So the chemist and I were talking about, okay, so how do we walk that out? What does that mean? And one of the things that came to mind is just to really know yourself. Know what your limitations are, whether they're physical limitations of a season of life, limitations financially, limitations emotionally, intellectually. Just being able to know yourself in those different areas will help you determine where your yes needs to be a yes and your no needs to be a no. And one of the other things that comes to my mind is your goals and your dreams. And so if you have a personal mission statement, or goals that are kind of specific, I know I want to lose 10 pounds this year, or I know I really want to work in a specific industry, or I want to get married and have a baby, or I know I don't want to marry someone, blah, blah, blah. So if you have kind of specific goals, then it's going to be easier to let your yes be yes and your no be no. And values along the same way. If you value certain things, maybe your faith is a huge value for you, then that's going to help you a little bit more keep your yes and as a strong yes. For me, this really launched itself when I discovered that I was double booking things on my calendar. We laugh about this in my house because it's really bumpy right now. Because I went through a season when I was single where I would like to go to a lot of different events, and the problem with that is there can be 2 or 3 events going on in one day, and I would really try to hit them all. When we got married, and even before we got married, I put as a goal for myself that if I had a commitment on my calendar, I would keep that commitment. Whatever was first there, if at all possible, was going to be my yes. Now I might change that with if my daughter happened to call and say, hey, do you want to hang out? Daughter time always trumps what's on the calendar, or a lot of times trumps on what's on the calendar. But the point is that when I know what my goals are, and when I know what I'm saying yes to as far as calendar appointments, it's easier to keep that first thing on the calendar and say, no, one of my values is my yes is a yes and my no is a no. And so I'm going to honor this first commitment that I had because it was important enough to put it on the calendar. So as we were talking about this, I asked the chemist, what comes to mind with you with the power of yes? And he said, the other value that we share in our marriage is that we always pray and ask God first. Like, is this something you really want us to do? Is this something that, lines up with our goals or doesn't line up with our goals? For example, conferences, we tend to really pause and look at a conference before we say yes to, because especially living where we live, we have so many opportunities to attend different things, and it's important for us to just kind of pause and just say, you know what, where does this fit in our values and in our goals and with our time limitations? And then also just pray and just ask God, like, God, is this something that you want us to go to? Is this important for how you see our lives going? So there's your word for the day. There's your mindset. So the encouragement and the invitation is just to think about what you're saying yes to, and just let your yes be yes and your no be no. And there's always grace for just keeping that decision where it was in the first place. There's always grace for that. And then there's always grace for considering and saying, you know what, daughter time is always going to trump a social event, and I want to spend time with my daughter. So give yourself grace, but also give yourself time to just dig in and say, what is my mindset? What are my goals? And let your yes be yes and your no be no. Be blessed. I'm Ann B. Say, Sharon Hope, back on the road again, and we'll talk to you soon.